Today I want to talk about rule number 9 of the rules of the road and that discusses conduct of vessels in narrow channels. With rule number 9 the rules become more specific. Although rule number 9 applies in all conditions of visibility, it applies only on certain waters and to certain vessels. Two terms are used throughout the rule that are not defined, and they are narrow channels and a narrow fairway. Now we must assume that the rules, when they were formulated, and the people either believed that their meanings are too obvious, or else they were not able to formulate suitably concise definition of these two terms. Now rule number 9 applies only on waters described by these two terms. What is narrow channel or what is narrow depends on the type of the vessel and the circumstances. A channel is a natural or dredged lane restricted on either side by shallow water. It is often marked by buoys. A fairway is generally in open water, and the water on either side is not much shallower than that within the fairway. Fairways are used to route vessels away from natural hazards, oil platforms, mines, or smaller vessels. Now, fairways should be differentiated from the lanes in traffic separation schemes. So we'll start with part A of the rule. Now, just as all cars drive on the right side of the road, for example in the United States, or on the left side, for example in the UK, paragraph A requires all vessels to navigate on the far right side of a narrow channel, whether or not the traffic is approaching from the other direction. If that is not safe or practicable, however, the mariner is justified in moving closer to the center or even over the center to the left side, providing the traffic permits such action. Now, the words shall not impede as used in B says that vessels directed not to impede shall take early enough action that sufficient sea room exists for the safe passage. Now, this is also in Rule 8, Part F. Now, if risk of collision does arise, ideally it should not, but if it does arise, the impeding vessel retains its duty to stay out of the way. And notwithstanding any stand-on rights, the more general steering and sailing rules may have given it. In other words, the vessel directed not to impede should stay well clear. Now, paragraph B here gives right to non-sailing vessels that are over 20 meters long and can safely navigate only within the narrow channel or fairway. Now, both conditions must be met. The rule does not assign rights between power-driven vessels less than 20 meters long and sailing vessels, as these vessels fall into the same category for the purposes of this rule. Paragraph C, unlike paragraph B, gives right to any vessel navigating within a narrow channel or fairway, not just to those that can safely operate only within the channel or fairway. Vessels engaged in fishing, as defined in Rule 3 Part D, must stay out of the way, although they are permitted to fish in the channel or fairway if it is not otherwise being used. Paragraph D of the international rule prohibits all vessels from crossing a narrow channel or fairway in a way that would impede a vessel that could not safely operate outside of the channel or fairway. Now, shall not impede is again a word used in rule number 8 part F, and the same language is operative here. If your vessel is directed not to impede another, try to avoid causing the other vessel to change its course or speed. If you blunder into a risk of collision situation, the general steering and sailing rules will not apply to you. You will continue to be obliged to stay out of the way. Be mindful, however, that in Rule 8 number F part 3 says that general rules will apply to the vessels you are impeding. Therefore, it may be helpful to contact the other vessel, for example through the VHF, to inform its operator of your intentions early on. The rule also provides for the vessel constrained to the channel to sound 5 or more short blasts if in doubt as to the intention of the vessel sounding the crossing signal. Note that the international rules refer to the sound signal prescribed in Rule 34 Part D. Now, the rule refers to 5 or more short blasts as a danger signal, but rather calls for the signal's use when either vessel fails to understand the intentions or actions of the other, or is in doubt whether sufficient action is being taken by the other to avoid collision. Thinking of the 5 blast signal as a danger signal may cause a vessel's officer on watch to delay its use until a situation of potential danger has developed into one of immediate danger. Its early application in the circumstances of doubt would likely focus the attention of the parties while there is still time to act effectively in a non-crisis environment. So think of the 5 blast signal as a doubt signal rather than as a danger signal. Now we come to paragraph E, which gives the procedures for overtaking in a narrow channel and fairway, and hence should be read in conjunction with rule number 13, the rule for overtaking in general, and with rule number 34 part C, which prescribes the sound signals for overtaking. The requirements for overtaking narrow channels and fairways and the sound signals for overtaking in general vary substantially between the international rules and the inland rules. The international rules Number 9, requirement for overtaking applies only when the overtaken vessel has to take maneuvering action to permit a safe passing. If the overtaken vessel agrees with the overtaking vessel's passing proposal, then the overtaken vessel is required to take steps to permit the safe passing. The sound signals used for overtaking in open water are the same as for overtaking in narrow channels, although the international overtaking signals are different from those that are used in inland waters. International rule number 9E says that when in doubt exists as to the other vessel's intentions, the overtaken vessel may sound the rule 34D of the 5 short blast doubt signals. This is superfluous and merely act as a reminder of rule number 34D requirement for all vessels to sound the 5 blast signal when doubt exists. Finally, part F cautions vessels nearing a blind bend or other area where an approaching vessel may be obscured and reminds them to obey rule number 34E signal requirement. The requirements in this paragraph offer nothing new. The requirement for lookout, safe speed and so forth cover needed precautions, and rule 34E covers the signal requirement. Anchoring in a narrow channel is obviously not a good practice and is prohibited by rule number 9 part G, except under pressing circumstances. It is unlawful to tie up or anchor barges or other craft in navigable channels in such a manner as to prevent or obstruct the passage of other vessels or craft. Anchorage regulations cover background, procedures, rules and a list of special anchorage areas and anchorage grounds.